Well, thank you so much for joining us. I am Chef Ellen, and we are so excited to do the cooking lessons for the Girl Scouts. Today we have ground turkey, Mexican lasagna. It can be ground beef, it can be ground whatever meat you have, Mexican lasagna, and some fresh guacamole. We're going to start with the lasagna. A few things we're going to need. Some bell peppers. I have got yellow and red, and a red onion. Some avocados for a little later. All right, we're going to start by preparing our vegetables. Generally, mise en place would be the French term you use, everything in its place. So I pulled out my recipe. I got my peppers, my onion, I got my beans, my corn sitting out. I've got everything that I should need in front of me, hopefully. I like to start with prepping any of the vegetables I need for the dish. That way I'm not getting meat started in a pan and then going, oh no, I have to cut this whole vegetable, and then potentially burning or overcooking, whatever may happen to whatever is going on in the stove. So we will start today with our onion. So to dice the onion, first we're going to get our scrap bucket out. So any vegetable scraps get thrown in here. It's what we use to make our homemade stock in the restaurant. To cut our onion, we're going to leave a little hairy end on. And this top end, we're going to cut off. All right. Throw that in our stock bucket. Leave this end on, cut in half through it. The reason we're doing that is to give ourselves a nice flat surface to work on. Now I'm going to leave this outside little root end attached and take off the outside skin because I want to do a nice little dice on this onion. Same thing with this one, take the outside skin off. All right, now to dice this onion, we've got our little circle, our little rainbow going on. I'm gonna cut towards the center of this, angling my knife as I go. And how wide I cut it is about as wide as I want my final dice to be. So I'm gonna leave that root end intact as I go. And ideally, that will stay intact, and all of these you can spread apart a little bit. Now we're going to use our bear claw grip. So instead of keeping our fingers out, we're going to angle them backwards, and that's going to help keep us from cutting anything off. It's going to help buffer the knife for us and use it as a guide. We're going to use our thumb and our pinky to keep those bottom edges as tight as possible on this onion as we go through and cut as wide as we want that dice to be. And then we take this root end off, throw it away. We're left with a nice diced onion. So one more time on that. We are cutting in towards the center, changing the angle of our knife as we go to keep it in line with the center of the onion. We're going to have all of these layers. Oops, cut one off a little bit. That's okay. You just slide it back in, call it good. Keep it taut. Cut down this way. Throw the root end out. Oops, one little piece got away. There we go. And we've got our dice. Now, if you wanted to slice your onion instead, you could take the root end off. And then instead of leaving the root end intact, you just cut all the way through your onion, changing the angle as you go. However, since I'm cutting off the support, I don't want to cut backwards this way. It's not going to be safe or sturdy. So instead, flip this onion over and continue about my business just the way I was doing before. And then you've got a sliced onion. We'll put that aside for later. All right, now we need some peppers. Go with our red pepper for this one. Take off the sticker. All right, to cut our peppers, we are going to cut the top and the bottom off. And unless I'm making a stuffed pepper dish, this is always the preparation I'll go with. Top and bottom off. The bottom I can go ahead and slice. Then I can turn it around and dice it. Throw that in with our onion. Now this top section, we got a little baby pepper growing in our pepper. Neat. I've seen as many as 3 little peppers inside of a big pepper before. Sometimes you can even cut them open and find their own seeds inside of them. And we can make stock with it. Now, if this stem is hard to pop out, what you can do is just cut around. So that I've taken off most of the flesh from the top. And then I'm left with the slices that I can go through and then dice. Now, what I'm left with here, another little baby pepper, is the seeds and the rest of my pepper flesh here. And it's connected by a few spots to the outside, the seeds to the outside. I'm going to pick one of those spots, I'm going to cut it off. So where it was connected there is now gone. Now with the other connections, you can either take your knife and cut them off, or you can just use your hand and pull it right out. This little membrane in here gets a little bit bitter, so you can pull that part out as well. And then from there, you've got a nice flat surface to work with. So we can go ahead and slice and go through the other way and dice. All right. Okay. So we've got red pepper, we have got onion. The other pepper that we have going in here is a green chili pepper, but those are a canned product. That's going to look a little like this. They usually come in about 4 to 7 ounce cans at the grocery store. Okay, I've got a big skillet on my stove. I'm going to turn on the heat. I'm going to add a little bit of olive oil just to keep my ground beef from sticking too much, but I don't want to add too much because the ground beef I'm using for the recipe today will let off some fat, and I don't want to have too much fat in the final dish. That's more personal preference than anything, though. You can always drain your meat after you cook it if you'd like. All right. We're going to throw some gloves on. And we're going to take about a pound and a half of our ground beef. And throw it in our pan. Now, as that starts cooking, we want to mix up a little bit of taco seasoning. You can buy just the jars of taco seasoning at the store. What we find in doing a lot of cooking at our restaurant is that those tend to be higher in sodium. And I do a lot of cooking for people with diet and allergy concerns. So people who need to eat healthy or diabetic friendly or things like that. So the things we do, like making our own stock and mixing our own spices, help us control what's going in our final product. So we're going to start with a little bit of salt and pepper. The next basics that we have for taco seasoning are cumin and chili powder. Now, do I have exact measurements for these? No, I just kind of eyeball it. So I have about 2 tablespoons of each cumin and chili powder and about a tablespoon of a salt and pepper blend. I'm going to add 1 to 2 tablespoons of paprika for that nice bright red color. It doesn't add too much flavor. A little onion powder, about half the amount of the cumin and chili powder. Same with garlic powder. And the last thing I like to add to my taco blend is a little bit of oregano. Now, there is a variety of oregano called Mexican oregano that grows in Mexico. Has a slightly different flavor, but is similar enough that your regular oregano that you would use in your Italian blends would work as well. All right, we're going to mix up our ground beef a little bit. as that starts to brown, I'm going to add in all of our peppers and onion. And I'm also going to add in a little bit of minced garlic. Now I just do the jarred minced garlic. I find that the jarred minced garlic is a nice in-between of a fresh clove, which tends to be difficult to process. The papery garlic skins like to stick to just about everything. And while it has great flavor, unless I'm doing a sliced whole clove preparation, I tend to go with the minced because it will save you on your prep time and still keep a lot of that fresh garlic flavor to it. Minced garlic is typically packaged in water. It shouldn't be white, it should be a little off yellow. If you see a white minced garlic in a jar, it has probably been bleached, which does happen to a lot of, like our white breads and things that have the flour bleached just for aesthetic purposes. So you can look for those things. And if you're wondering, why is this food so bright white or so colorful, it's probably an artificial ingredient or addition. Now for our taco seasoning, I'm going to go ahead and mix everything up together. And I'm going to throw some into our ground beef. All right. Now I'm waiting until I can start to smell those peppers and that onion. And then I'm going to add in my green chilies and some crushed tomato. You could do a tomato sauce or a diced tomato as well. I tend to use the crushed tomato because it's got a little bit of texture, but still that nice canned tomato taste that I'm looking for with my tomato-based sauce for my lasagna. The other thing that I have is black beans and corn, which we can mix together. We can just use our vegetable bowl here. And these are going to be the other layer. So if we think of a traditional lasagna, we would usually have a red sauce, usually with some sort of meat as one layer. In this case, we're going to have our sauce with beef and pepper layer. And in a regular lasagna, you would usually have a layer of just a mix of cheeses. In this case, we're going to have a layer of cheese, but also with our pepper and corn. So it's actually quite a bit healthier than your traditional lasagna as well. And if you have a corn and beans salsa you really like, you can use that instead of just plain corn and beans for the layer as well. All right. So those onions are starting to get translucent, so they're slightly see-through at the edges. I can smell my peppers and my onion. So to this, I'm going to add my green chilies, about 4 ounces or so, and my crushed tomatoes. Now this sauce, the flavors will come together the longer that it sits. So if you taste it right away and you're like, this still tastes like just canned tomato, it might not be the best idea to add a bunch of seasoning right away. You might want to wait about 5 minutes or so, let it simmer, and come back and taste it again, because you might find those flavors are going to have a chance to really kind of meld together, which is typical for most tomato-based sauces. All right. So we're just going to let that simmer. And while that's simmering, we can mix up a little quick guacamole. All right. I got a bowl. I got a couple avocados. Now, how do you choose the best avocado? Well, I typically look for something that when I press down on it, it has a little give. I can feel that it's soft. It's not like hollow and caving in under the skin. And it's not so firm that I can't press my finger into it at all. Most of the time, you're going to be safer buying your avocados a day or two ahead of time. Make sure they're a little hard. Put them in a paper bag. Put that bag on the counter in a nice cool dark spot, and they'll ripen up within a day or two. Now for these, you're gonna cut, and they got a pit in the middle of that avocado. So you're gonna go until that knife hits the pit, and you're gonna roll it all the way around, and then you can open it up. Now the side that still has the pit in it, you can take your thumbs on the back, your fingers on the front, pop that out. TikTok taught me that one. So same thing on our other one. We're gonna cut in until we feel that pit. So don't go as hard as you can to go all the way through it. You want a nice light touch. You wanna just rock this around. Open it up. It's quite a bit larger in here. Putting our 2 thumbs on the back, 4 fingers on the front, pop that right out. All right. Now, if you want to do a fancy preparation for your avocado, like I want a nice, beautiful slice, what you would do is leave it in the half shell. Paring knife is a great tool for this too, because you want a very, very light touch, because you want to feel your knife running along the back of that avocado shell, but you don't want it going through the avocado shell. So if I wanted a nice slice, I would give it all of those little cuts, and I would take my big spoon, run it around the edge, and then you have your avocado slices. So then if you wanted diced avocado, you could just do a couple of big cuts down this way, a couple of big cuts down this way. Take that out with your spoon, and you've got some diced. We're making guacamole, so it really doesn't matter either way, because we're going to squish it all up. So you can just take your spoon straight in there. Ooh, peel all that out. Another fun preparation is to scoop out a little bit extra around where the pit was, crack an egg in there, top it with some cheese, and bake it for a nice healthy breakfast. All right, so I'm going to use my spoon to chop up some of the big parts of my avocado. I'm not going to throw this in my stock bucket just because it's a little too fatty to go well with our stock. Gonna give our meat a stir again. Ooh, that's looking good. All right, so now avocados are notorious for going brown. Same thing like apples, they go brown once you open it up. So what we can do over here, this is a little lime juice. This is actually key lime juice, so it's a little more bright and flavorful. But an acidic ingredient like a lime juice or a lemon juice will help keep your avocados green for a little bit longer. You also want to make sure you package them in an airtight container. My favorite way is to get a Ziploc baggie, and then when you go to put it in your fridge, squish it so all of the air is out of it, so it's a nice thin line, and then it won't get brown because it doesn't have any contact with the air to oxidize. I've got a little bit of salt and pepper in here. Gonna throw that in. A little bit of garlic. And you could stop there with your guacamole and say, hey, I'm good. This is all I want to put in here today. I like to get a little more fancy with it, so I've got another half of a red onion here. We can dice that quick. If you want to throw in some diced tomatoes, it's a good addition. If you are a cilantro fan, that is a good addition. There's a lot of ways that you can play with your guacamole and add whatever you prefer. All right. So I have got onion, garlic, avocado, salt, pepper, and lime juice. Then I am just taking a fork to mash my avocado. Since I like to have some chunks of like onion or tomato in my avocado, I don't like to really throw it through a food processor. But if you like a really smooth avocado with no chunks and no onion, you can absolutely use a food processor or a blender to mix it up. And you can also freeze pre-made guacamole or avocado in the Ziploc bags for up to a few months. And as long as there is no air in the bag, once you thaw them out, they will stay bright green. All right. Let's see how that tastes. Okay, we're good. So we can put that aside, snack on with chips, or to put on top of our lasagna when we're done. Speaking of our lasagna, here we have our meat mixture. So nice and thick and saucy, similar to a tomato sauce that you would put on pasta, like an Italian-based sauce. All right. I'm gonna grab a spoon. And I have corn tortillas over here. I tend to use corn tortillas instead of flour when I do any type of Mexican lasagna, enchilada bake, those kinds of things, because flour tortillas get really gummy when they're cooked with liquid, so then it's a little bit harder to cut through it unless you want to take a knife to every piece, whereas your corn tortilla will be a lot better to just cut through with your fork. It'll be a little easier to eat. Now you can use a big like 9x13 pan for this. I've actually got little individual size pans, so I can make this for like a meal prep for lunch. So I have my tortillas cut in half, and I take two little, ooh, no, you start with sauce, otherwise everything sticks. Golden rule. Not a lot of sauce either, just a little bit. A little bit of sauce on the bottom of each pan. All right. Then I cut my tortillas in half so they fit a little better. Otherwise, if you're using a 9x13 pan, you can put full tortillas in and then cut them in half to fit along the side if you need to. Whatever works. There's no rules in cooking. I learned that if anybody's going to question it, you just look at them and say, it's rustic. And everybody just says, okay. And they think it's the way that grandma made, and you let them think that and go about your day. So we've got our tortilla on the bottom. We've got another little layer. Thicker this time. Of our meat. And then I'm going to add right on top of that a little layer of our black beans and corn. And if you want to do these as separate layers with tortillas in between, you absolutely can too. You can assemble it however you would like. All right, so a little corn and bean magic in there. And then I have a blended cheese. So I have got a cheddar and Monterey Jack blend. And we will just do a little bit on top of each. Okay, then we go with another layer of tortillas. And then to top it off, another little layer of sauce. And a little layer of cheese on top of that will finish it off. Now, if you don't like having any crispy tortilla on the top, you could cover it all with sauce and it'll cook a little bit softer. I like having a little bit of that tortilla kind of crisp and charred, like a crispy chip on the top of my Mexican lasagnas. Another trick you could use is to sub a little bit of regular salsa in with the canned tomatoes if you want it a little bit spicier, or if you have a salsa that you really like. You could also, instead of using crushed tomatoes, use an enchilada sauce that you like, and then it would be more of an enchilada bake. All right. So I've got a sheet tray over here that I can pop these on quick. And since all of the fillings are cooked, all we need to do is finish cooking until the cheese is browned and melted. And that'll be right about 5 minutes. All right, so we just pulled out our lasagnas from the oven, gave them just enough time for the cheese to melt, start to get a little brown in a few spots. And what's nice about these kind of containers is you can just throw them on a plate and call it good. But we really want to see what's going on inside. All right, so this might be enough for about 2 servings here. We can take one out. Nice cheese pull, gotta love that, right? You got our few layers, you can see the bottom and the top stays together, and that sauce on the bottom is what keeps it from sticking to the bottom of the container that you're using. So we can put that to the side. Grab a little bit of that fresh guacamole. Boom. Mexican dinner on the table. Throw a little chips on the side and you've got your whole meal. All right. And so then those corn tortillas just cut through nice and easily. Let's get it all together. There you go. Whole family will get fed. And everybody will love it. And that's your simple Mexican dinner. You can mix it up a million ways, whatever your favorite taco ingredients are. In my house, we always add a little black olive onto the top. That's our favorite. You can add a little lettuce on the side, and you're good to go. Thank you so much for joining us for class, and I hope you enjoy your meal.